So once again, I'd like to welcome everybody to the Schoology overview. I've heard it said many different ways, but I believe it is Schoology. And this is another learning management system that we are going to review. It is one of the top 5 chosen in Washington State out of 117 school districts that took the survey. And our job with this is to do a very broad overview, and we're here to support you as well. And now with that, I do want to talk about different ways that we can support specifically who is part of this team, because I respect every single one of them and know the jobs that they do. So I want to go through our teammates within this session. We do have a number of them here with us today. And if they are in the room, I would like them to unmute and introduce themselves. So we'll start with ESD 101, located in Spokane. We have Jeff Crawford, and we also have Steve. So Steve.
Hi, Steve Schreiner here.
I interrupted you. Do you want to do it again?
No, that was it. I just wanted to say my name. Hi, everybody.
Perfect. There's Steve, and Steve will help me today. He has some expertise within Schoology as well. We have ESD 105. We have Larry Davison as well as Darcy Jameson. Larry has joined us today, and I don't know if he was able to make it back. Okay, I'm seeing a head no. From ESD 112, which is in Vancouver, we have Catherine, and we also have Christina, and Christina is with us.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here, ESD 112.
And Christina is also going to be our amazing chat monitor. So she'll help respond to those questions and support us in that way and help with any other things that we need as well. I'm Andrew Hickman from 113 Capital Region, so Olympia, Washington, located in Tumwater, and I'm currently presenting out of my home, which is in Lacey, so kind of different little areas. We have ESD 114, which has Susan Lathrop. We have Puget Sound ESD 121, Amber, and Amber is with us.
Hi, Amber McCulloch, PSESD.
Thank you, Amber. ESD 123, we have Mike Esping. North Central ESD 171 in Wenatchee is Pete Phillips, and I don't know if Pete was able to rejoin us or not. Okay. ESD 189 is Amy Colburn. And then I'm going to add one. We also have from OSPI, Dennis Small is with us. Dennis, do you want to say hi?
You're just checking to see if I can find my mute button. Hello, this is Dennis Small here at OSPI. Delighted to be with you, and thanks again to the ESD folks for taking the leadership on this. We're delighted to have this opportunity to help people get up to speed on such an important part of what looks like going to be a key issue this fall.
Thank you for joining us, Dennis. So one of the things I do want to highlight in this session is the importance of partnership and learning from each other with community, because as you all know, being siloed is very difficult. So the AESD, we all work together, we all support each other, and I know I can call on any of my colleagues if I need any support. So we want to make sure that you're aware that we're here for you as well. And that is one of the outcomes for me with these sessions, is to put faces with people who can support you. We do recommend contacting your region, but we're all always here to help across the state too. So our job is to be a best support we can, and I'm more than happy to help, as well as everybody else on the team. The purpose of this one specifically is to familiarize yourself with some of the features of Schoology. Now, like I've said many times before, today we will not get to every feature, but if you do have specific questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. At the end, we should have some time to unmute and ask them or have clarifying as well. The next one is we want to understand how different users interface with the different platforms, the different learning management systems. So those are our two main objectives with this overview of Schoology, and we really want to help support you any way we can. The next thing is if you have taken the Reimagine WA or any other platform training which talks about the Core 4, the Core 4 is an idea that we have these different systems, and to make it simplified for parents, students, as well as teachers, we really want to narrow down what we are using so it's a little simpler across the district. One of the things within the Core 4 is you will have a home base. I also call this a hub. It is where all announcements, materials, assignments, everything is posted. It's your one-stop shop for students. We would have a synchronous video option. Schoology has its own in this instance called Conferences, which does live video sessions very much like this. Then you would have a asynchronous video, which we used as a sample in this of Screencastify to record and share later. A lot of new learning is done with the asynchronous. So for example, if your staff or others could not attend this session, you could always find it asynchronously. They could watch, they could pause, they could slow it down and learn that way as well. But then the last thing is having a storage system. So having some place to have all your files to be accessible for your students. It could also be in the hub. It could be in your home base. And some of them have them all built in. So we do have some of them that all 4 are built in one system. But this is showing that the core 4 can be done with different tools. And that way you're learning the main tools within your system. Okay. And with that, we're going to get right in to Schoology. We are following a very similar format where we show the tools and the features within it to make sure that we highlight kind of the main things we need to think about. So the first main thing is, how do you create a course? Well, according to these screenshots, as you can see here, and I'll demo it as well when we get in there. If you don't have any courses, you're going to click on the main dashboard, create a course. It will be this button here. And then it has you enter the course name, if there's a section, if there's a subject, and what level. So very simply, you fill out the information and push start, and it self-populates the course and allows you to then get into it. So that's how you create a course from scratch. How you would join a course within Schoology is students can join the course through an access code. So once again, the access code will be there. This is actually seen in the bottom left of the screen, and you can give them the access code. Notice it says require approval, okay? Or districts can import them. So your IT department can import members through the SIS integration. Basically, it's a CSV file. They put the names, emails, it gets uploaded, and your students are self-enrolled for them. The other thing that's noticeable with this is they do have specific parent access codes. And so you can turn on parents' access codes and allow them to have it. We will look at what parents have access to a little bit, but just an awareness of students can join by code, they can be imported, and parents can also join by a code. Just wanted to start there. Christina, is there any questions in the chat so far?
Not at this time yet. Seems like a quiet group right now. Must be doing a great job.
Go that route. Okay, next one. How is Schoology organized? Well, I do kind of a tiered approach when I think about organization. Now, organization really is teacher dependent. It is a personal preference on how you always organize any of these learning management systems. But the way they have it structured is you have in your overall dashboard, you have your courses. So the overall lens is you have a course. Then within the course, it's organized in a file manner. And I'm going to go into Schoology in a second and show what this looks like. Then teachers need to choose their method of organization within those files. Here's some samples of how you could do that. You could organize the files by subject. You could organize it by dates. So this is week 1, week 2. You could organize it by different units. Let's say it's just a math class. You could have, okay, this is unit 1, operations, algebraic thinking. Okay, this is unit 2, numbers base 10. I mean, you could organize it by that. Or there's different ways you can organize it as well. So up to you. This is a personal preference of how you organize. Then within folders, you are allowed to add subfolders, content, and other materials. So really you have course level and then folders. Let's look at what that looks like within Schoology. So I am logged in. Here's my main dashboard area. You'll notice this is where notifications are. I'm going to go into my courses. Here's my course. Okay. If I was to add materials, it goes into a folder, so I can add my first level of organization. And I can give this folder, and I'm going to say this is a math class, so I'm going to say this is a numbers base 10 folder, which is one of these standards. I can choose a folder color, give it a description if I want, and give it dates. Dates added to the calendar, always good to do. So there's a folder. I can then, in this folder, put additional materials. So thinking about a course, it's a layered perspective. So I could add another folder, which could then break it into Unit 3, etc. I could then add assignments, test quizzes, assessments, or any of these features underneath the folder. I could do another folder. I could call this one Operations in Algebraic Thinking, give it blue, and create a separate folder. So now I have 2 folders. I can put different materials and assignments under each one. Okay, I'm going to pause there. Steve, do you have anything to add about adding folders or levels of organization?
If you set me up as a co-host, I could share a real life course and explain what it looks like.
We can do that, and I apologize, I forgot to do that right before we started. There you are.
There we go. Okay. Okay, here's a course that I developed for asynchronous use by teachers throughout the state of Washington. And this one was led during April and May of this school year. So I organized this with folders, just like Andrew was saying in the past. For those of you who are on small screens, I'll zoom in so that you can see this even better. So I did this with a chronological view. So like week by week by week, that's how I organized each of these folders. And folders in this case had individual assignments that composed them, as well as discussions. And I could have also added materials. So ultimately, the user experience is that everything is organized in a way that was chronological. And I felt like for an asynchronous course like this one, that made the most sense. But depending on your own teaching style, you could really customize this to be anything that you want.
And I think that's one of the things we really want to make sure that we get in with all of these LMS overviews. There's a lot of personal ways to different organize. One of the best practices you can do is talk with your collaborative group of teachers, your colleagues, and think of an organization structure that works for all of you. That way your students are seeing the same thing. So you're all using Schoology now. What if we all did it by weeks? Well, that would make it a little simpler for students. Okay. So just think about that. You need to have those discussions within your teams.
Well, I still have the screen up if any of you have particular questions about how I organize this or what these different items are. You're welcome to post them now, or we can come back to them later.
I'm not seeing any in the chat right now, but that doesn't mean they're not formulating in their head and will come back later.
Right.
Perfect. So when we're on Steve's screen, don't leave yet, if that's okay.
Okay, you got it.
You want to show them on the left-hand side just where the access code is, just to show how to get people in. You'll notice it's there. There's a quick, easy reset button. So if for some reason you wanted to now have a new one for students, there can be a reset. If you were to join, if you were to go to Schoology and have your own account, you could actually join his course right here using that code. So just be aware. That's how simple it is to find that. The other thing you need to see is how he added all of those is he went to add materials, and then there's all the different options. They're right there. Everything is in a one drop-down menu to add within those folders. So if he was to add an assignment, if you would mind showing really quick.
Sure. So I'd click add assignment, and then I would type in the details, just like what Andrew was mentioning previously. So this could be, I would chronologically on my assignment. So let's say this was assignment 20, for example. I would then type in the description, the due date, and then some optional materials if I wanted to. One thing I particularly like about the Schoology interface is that you can drag and drop into different folders if you want. So let's say that I realized assignment 5 is actually a better fit for module 2. I would just click and hold on assignment 5 and drag it down into the correct positioning in module 2. And so at any moment, you can completely change the structure and layout of your course without tricky like coding or anything else. You just drag and drop into the sequencing that makes the most sense.
So Steve, that has triggered a few questions from the chat.
Great.
So do reset codes need to be cleared with IT? So if I am as a teacher want to reset my code, do I need to go and ask IT first?
I guess if your district expects you to, then you would, but I don't really see the purpose of that. I think the bigger idea would be that you would give the code to all of your students at the start of a grading period or term or whatever you're using. And then once all 30 of your kids are in there, you could reset the code so that you don't get random people joining later. Like what if they share it with their friends somewhere else?
I know, it's so weird. Middle schoolers do this the most. They will share codes and get my homework, I guess. Another question I have in the chat is, can you have subfolders inside the main folder?
So in this case, I'm going to drag this subfolder up here and then stick it into here. So we've got now module 1 with a subfolder, and then I could further add additional items within that one subfolder.
So think about differentiation. You could do different groups. You really have to think about how you're going to organize these courses. My biggest recommendation is just talk with your colleagues, because if you're going to organize it in a way that really, really works, then it should be common. It's just best practice for students, but it's great.
And then Kathy had another question. Are assignments and comments or submissions given a timestamp when they're submitted as well as when they're returned?
Yeah, so what you'll see is that this assignment was due on April 28th by 11:59 p.m. And anybody who did it by then has the on-time designation here. And anybody who turned it in after that deadline, it shows that. So like for Philip, for example, right here, I can see that it was actually turned in Wednesday, April 29th at 8:16 a.m. So that marked it as late, but he could still turn it in. Just because he missed the initial deadline doesn't mean he's blocked from turning in that assignment. So it is still available later. The same thing happens within discussion boards. So I use this a lot with an asynchronous format. I didn't want people to just turn in things only visible to me. I wanted to build community. And so you'll see here that Andrea posted at 6:31 p.m. on April 23rd, and then got a few replies within the next following weeks. And Darlene posted at 4:43 p.m. on April 24th, and then replies over the following weeks. So yes, everything is timestamped, both assignments as well as participation on online discussions.
As well as when the teacher comments back.
Yeah,
correct?
Everything's timestamped, yeah.
Thank you.
Now, so I've played with this quite a bit, and I've used this myself. Could you do me a favor? And since yours is developed, I think it'd be better to show here. Could you go to course options and show some of the features under that? So course options, it's a little small, so people don't really know to look here all the time. But if you go in here, this is where you can turn on certain things for your specific course. For example, you could add some extra details and add some privacy features. Okay, this is where you can choose who can see what within a course and who has different rights and responsibilities. Now down below, this is also where you can turn on the parent settings. And the parent settings for within Schoology, it tells you there, parents have a view-only access to their child's courses, and it helps you maintain the anonymous members from your parents, okay? So anonymity. So just be aware, you can turn on parent features, you can give them access, they would view their child's course, but it maintains other views from other parents, so they would see their child's. Now, the other question I get a lot when I'm presenting Schoology is the moderation question. So how do you moderate? So if you scroll up a little bit, there's actually a moderate button. You can turn on moderation. So this, if enabled, if you enable it, you are able then to choose what is shared and what is not shared. You have to say yes or no as a teacher before it gets posted. So you get to make those decisions if you would like to moderate or not, as well as you as a teacher can see things that have been deleted here as well. So
now, can I set that up per discussion? So can I moderate one discussion and not moderate the whole class? Or do I have to make a universal decision per course?
It's universal. One other item that I think is worth pointing out is, especially if you're thinking about online exclusive instruction, you can choose what your default landing page is going to be. And so what that means is when somebody visits your course from their course dropdown, do you want them to see the updates, which would be like the social feed where you and maybe your students are posting materials? or do you want to see the actual folder structure that you've developed? You can choose that, and you could even change it moment by moment. So when I initially built out this course, I had it like this. The folder structure was what people saw when they first visited the course. But then once it actually kicked off and we had day-to-day work to do, I switched it so that it was the updates that people would by default go to, so that they would be sure to see important updates that I posted, or links to assignments, or the ability to comment or ask questions on the things that I was posting.
Okay, one of the things we always talk about within this as well are notifications. Would you mind sharing how to, or what those look like? So there's the main tab notifications. And you can see what this looks like, and it does show you for all courses. So this is all notifications, or you can separate into the different menus. And then within your course, you can actually turn on different notification options. So the top right, there's a notifications button, and it allows you to pick which notifications you receive. And those are for email.
And those are per course, not universal like the other decision.
Correct.
Right.
Wonderful.
Well, so Christina, it's not universal across all your courses that you would have moderation. It's just every assignment in a particular course. So it's course by course by course, but not discussion by discussion by discussion.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Okay, let's pause for a minute and see if we have questions so far. I haven't noticed any, but let's see if anybody has any to type in, or if they want to unmute before we go to the next piece.
Sorry, Elizabeth. Hope my voice isn't choppy for everybody. I am hardwired to my router, so it's the best I can do.
Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions at this point. Would you mind sharing a gradebook view? I don't know if you want to show this course or how you're feeling about that, but
Yeah, I didn't actually do grades on this one, so
perfect.
fine.
And does this have, well, we'll get the question, but does this have SIS integration into Skyward or Cumulative?
Yes. So I think you have to pay extra for it if you want it to integrate with Skyward. Maybe that's up in the air for this fall. I know that the Google Classroom integration they're going to offer for free this coming fall. So maybe you could push on your WSIP rep to do the same thing with Schoology. Oh, and Scott just commented to me, no additional integration costs for Skyward or Cumulative. Scott, do you know, is that on Skyward's part? Because it's actually, to my knowledge, Skyward that charges the additional fee to districts, not Schoology. We'll see what that says on that one. So overall,
yeah, there's no addition.
Okay.
Yeah, there's no additional cost. There's a lot of Skyward users, and Muckleshoot and No Connection too, but Muckleteo both have Cumulative, and they both went this direction in a big part for that reason.
So if I had it enabled individual assignment grading, what you would be seeing here in the gradebook is each of those assignments, just like in any gradebook that is maintained digitally. And so overall, I have this grade that would be automatically calculated by the gradebook.
Yep.
So since we're talking grades anyway, if you go to grade setup, you'll see that you have the ability to do, for example, numeric grades or letter grades. You can provide weighting for different categories. So I could, for example, if I were still a science teacher, I could create a lab category that's 50% of the grade, and like an exams category that's 25% of the grade, or anything else like that. So you have the ability to customize the way that your grades are going to operate. One thing that Schoology does really interestingly is the ability to set up learning objectives in this mastery system. So instead of your students just focusing on, for example, earning 9 out of 10 points on an assignment, you might instead have them focus on mastering particular skills. And so in that case, you would designate learning objectives for your students, and then you could track their progress towards those learning objectives independent of traditional grades. You could also use a similar system with badging. And so this would be that you could add these badges or create your own badges. And you might say that students earn particular badges based on certain types of behaviors within the course. So it's not just traditional gradebook. You have these additional options available to you as well if you're interested.
Okay, let's pause for some questions. Not seeing any. Okay, would you mind talking a little bit, Steve, since you've had the most experience with this, I'm going to call on you.
Sure.
Would you mind talking on about groups at the top?
Okay, so groups are an item that I use when it is a course that doesn't involve assignments or grades. So for example, let's try to choose one that, well, how about Maker Movement? So this is one that was developed by Con McQuinn at Puget Sound ESD. And it doesn't have active use anymore. But the idea is that this was kind of a place for people of similar mindsets to share materials, advice, and resources with each other. So you'll notice that instead of having a gradebook and having folder structures and all the rest, in a group, you really have updates, discussions, and access to shared albums of materials. So it's like a more limited version. And so you could potentially see a group would be used for an after school activity or sports of some sort. Anything that doesn't involve traditional assignments or grading would be really well suited to group use. So I use groups for my own ESD to organize materials around our office of system and school improvement work, as well as just some internal things that we do around technology integration. So here's, for example, an improvement science group that we're just getting started with. So no grades, no assignments. It's
realistically, you could use groups for APLC with other teachers and colleagues. You could use groups for students working on assignments without grades. So specific, for example, senior projects, things like that. Groups could be used for just a number of resources as long as you do not expect grading to occur.
You got it.
Okay, and then let's do the resources tab.
So here in the public section, you have access to materials that have been developed by individual teachers or other organizations. And so it's not just, for example, grammar lessons or how to type math symbols in Schoology. You also have, for example, badges that have been shared by other educators and other materials. So that's all available in the public resources. You have access to the resources that are shared among the groups in which you participate. And then there are individual apps that you can integrate with Schoology. So I'm pretty limited. I only have Dropbox, Evernote, and Google Drive listed, but I could install additional apps here, and those would become available to me within the Schoology interface. You also have your personal resources. So this is where I export courses so that I could later import them elsewhere. And so this is, for example, where a teacher might build out a US history course and then knows that they'll be retiring in a year or two. They could export that course to their personal stash, and then they could download it so that they could later provide it to a new teacher who's going to fill in for them, or if they want to share it with another school within their school district. Basically, all of these courses can be shared as you see fit.
So very similar to the other learning management systems, Schoology has availability to share resources among internal staff as well as external, as well as search for resources that can be used within your district you're building with students. The biggest thing that we really need to say, if you're using those, make sure you talk with your IT, make sure you talk with your administrators, and always use professional judgment as well as understand copyright. So we don't want to say don't use them, but we don't want to say just use them all because you think they're great. You have to have some professional judgment when selecting different tools and resources to use with students.
So you wouldn't want to just go on your own and click Edpuzzle and integrate that independently of bigger decision making. You would want leadership buy-in around any of these apps that are available. But there's an extensive list. And so if you and your district are already using other materials, perhaps it's already integrated into the Schoology interface, and you could just look at this apps list here.
But always talk with IT, always talk with admin, because the best thing is if you get their support and something happens, then you have their support to fix it. It's a protection. Okay, let's pause there for questions.
Mark just shared with us all that he was able to take a Moodle course and import it into Schoology, and it worked pretty well. So there's an option there as well.
Yeah, all the learning management systems for the most part use the interchangeable format. So the IMGGGG thing, and you can share them across different platforms. And so that's really well. The organization structure is slightly different between all of them. For example, if I was to export from Schoology and import into Canvas, it would take me a little bit to tweak how they look, but the content can still be shared, which is nice. And the vice versa. So if you have on a Canvas, you could put it in here as well. And you would need to work on the content.
Now, I did have a question about those add-ons, such as Edpuzzle and things like that. Do they automatically use the student's login for Schoology for those accounts, or do they have to have usernames and accounts in other places? So I know for like Google Classroom, I can connect out to Edpuzzle and it brings all my Google Classroom's roster information in. Is that the same for Schoology?
My understanding is that would be an app specific question. So it really depends on how the integration was set up. It also is there about, oh, we're getting an answer from Scott.
It looks like Scott said if they're pre-integrated, not a teacher by teacher course, but the district level.
Perfect. But we also do want to say that some of these, if you'll notice, for example, the back channel there says starting at $15. So make sure that you're aware that some of these have additional cost.
I do have a question about, does Schoology have its own video conferencing component?
It does.
All right, that's a good segue. And then also Nicole asked, was the College Board on the public resources choice?
Okay, so I actually have never done a video conference via Schoology, so I'm not the best person to do this. If Andrew or Christina, if you know how.
It's an additional tool that has to be turned on. It's called Conferences. It was in your apps that you could have installed.
Got it.
So that has to be turned on, but yes, it is available. I have heard it works well. I have not tried it personally, so I cannot say personally how it does work, but it is available for you. It needs to be turned on. It does. Oh, but
sorry, Kathy also had a question. Is there a list somewhere that shows what apps it links with? I think it's just in the resource right there.
Mm-hmm. Well, and these get added a lot. So as new integrations get embedded, this gets updated. So I don't know if there's an extensive list that is constantly being updated. I do know it's large. There is a lot.
And I think that's the case with all LMSs. They can integrate. It's just a matter of which ones from the large group do I want to use in my district, and reminding people to kind of limit those. Because if a student's interacting with 15 different applications in a certain day, that's a little overwhelming. So try to think through that as a PLC. What are the resources we're going to come back to often? Not the oncers, but like the reusing every time.
Right. Okay, let's pause for questions. Any other questions that we're seeing?
No, we're just seeing, Scott was able to provide us with a list that's going on. So in the chat, there's a list of the app integrations that are currently there. And Elizabeth was just thankful that we shared that, you don't want to overwhelm people. Paring it down and using 5 great apps over and over and over again is much better than using 15,000. It's kind of like in the days when we first got iPads and everyone went app happy.
Yes.
Paring it down. Which ones are the ones you actually use every day in multiple settings? And somebody wants to know, what is the video conferencing app called?
It was called Conferences. So Schoology Conferences.
I think that's the questions for now.
Okay. So would you mind clicking on tools for me? So you're an admin at your Schoology, I'm assuming. So
Yes.
you have different tools available that teachers will not. Oh, thank you, Scott. So Scott messaged me privately. Conferences is also blue button as well, which is also what we saw in Canvas. So both of them use big blue button. Great resource, very quick, easy to set up, gets everybody in pretty simple. And yes, can be recorded. Yeah. So
That
these are
must mean that the big blue button has been updated to be HTML5 then,
that
and
is
not
true.
Flash. I like that.
Okay, so these are tools that Steve has. Not everybody will have these. Just be aware. He has admin privileges.
Yeah, so if you did end up paying for the enhanced version of Schoology, you would have school management set up. And it's not you necessarily, but you, like your district, would have this. So you would be working with your IT department around how all of this would be set up and work. So user management, access to analytics, the ability to organize this in a deeper way than you would be able to accomplish with the free version. One item that I think is worth mentioning in this is that I think Schoology is well suited to online exclusive instruction in that you can create items for students where they unlock at certain times or because of certain behaviors. So for example, if a student progresses through part 4, it would then unlock part 5 for them. So rather than just supplementing what would happen in a traditional face-to-face classroom, you could conceivably build a course on Schoology where students would move through at their own pacing and it would automatically unlock the next step for them as they move through the course. So I feel like that's one of the strengths of this platform. And if that's something that is important to your decision making, it's just something you should be aware of.
Yeah, Canvas can do that as well and a couple of the other LMSs. So that's nice to know. Thank you, Steve.
Okay, the other thing we need to highlight, make sure that we acknowledge with this is the internal calendar, which will show the upcoming assignments, etc., that are due. Okay, as well as the internal messaging system, which is the email. Okay, so there are internal systems so that you can have conversations as well as send and receive, which we need to make sure that we highlight. Thank you.
And those can be turned off at various grade bands or adjusted for different groups, right?
Correct.
I am not positive on whether you can adjust messaging options group by group or person by person or grade by grade.
Well, that's something we'll look into and get back to you guys on.
Okay, there is mobile app as well as desktop version available for this. It does work on all devices. I'm going to make sure that we said that. The mobile version kind of simplifies the screen, but it does allow you to access resources, etc. So both of them are available within this as well. And it is an online platform. Just leave it at that. Okay, let's pause for questions before we go on to the other considerations.
Looks like we're doing okay right now. We are getting close to timeline here soon.
Okay, so I'm going to steal the screen back if that's okay, Steve. Thank you. So just once again, we really want to highlight these other considerations. Please remember to talk to your district about data privacy and their policies. We need to make sure that we're very aware that individual districts have different policies. So you need to talk to your department about that, which then goes into the what apps can I use, what apps can I integrate with, how are they logging in, etc. Also talk about pricing. We don't bring up pricing in this because it's an individual district discussion as well as using different numbers, etc. So pricing, not with us, but we do have contact people, etc. And we're more than happy to get you in contact. SIS integration, we do know it's available specifically with this one, and we could talk about that at a future point, but just remember to consider this. Talk with your department. Are you going to use it or not? What does it look like? How are you going to use it? Onboarding, that needs to have training for your staff, students, as well as consider how to import with parents. So how are you going to support them in the future? We are here to help. I will just throw us out there. We can help you as much as we can, but you do need to consider, what are your onboarding policies? How are you going to do this in the future, etc. You need to have constant discussions with IT and admin. If this is your initial go into any learning management system, bring your IT on board right away. Make sure you're communicating with them. Make sure you're talking with your administrative support. What does that look like? And then back to the integration with other tools. What else are we using? Besides the learning management system, what are other pieces of the core 4? What are other applications? What will we be using to best support our students? Have those discussions. Is it grade band specific? Is it building specific? Really, we want to make it as simple as possible for everybody. We want them to not be overwhelmed. So having these discussions with your team and making decisions as a team is best practice, because it will support. It will support students, it will support parents, and support teachers as we continue down this path. So those are other considerations you must have. It's a must. We're here to support you. We will do best we can to help, but have those considerations, have those discussions.
I think you need to add, I would like to add to those discussions is, what hardware are we asking students to use? Are we going to be mixing up our devices in certain grade bands? Are we using bring your own device? What is the hardware that we're going to use to access any of our LMSs? And does that a good fit? Because each hardware device has different things that come into it. So think about, what are your students going to be using that you currently have, and what is their tech connection expertise? We all saw that some of our students don't have as good of access to the internet as others. So how does that all going to play in with your LMS choice?
Okay, there's a question in the chat. My question is about, what do you do for quizzes? How are they created? Are they timed? Do they lock down users' Chromebooks? Do they randomize? Can you make a test blank, etc.? So let's talk about quizzes. Go ahead, Steve.
I have not done a quiz with my adult learners, so I have no real life experience here.
So let's just demo one. We can set one up and see what it looks like. I have no problem with that. So if I go in here into my course and I want to add materials, and there's a test or quiz, I do want to notice that there is an add assessment as well. So they are different, they are separated. But if I add a test quiz, give it a name. I find it a little ironic. I'm calling it a test, but doing it. What is the grading period? Is this a midterm? Do I have a due date? I will put a due date. I will say it's tomorrow. Okay. Let's put this in a new grading category. I'm going to say this is a quiz. And what's the factor? I'm going to say this is worth 1. What's the scale? Oh, I want to do, actually, I'm going to do letter grade. I like that availability. Am I publishing to students? What are my features I'm adding? So am I individually assigned, which means you can differentiate using this. You can do a different assessment for different students. Am I publishing now? Is it statistics? Am I allowing comments? I'm going to say no comments. And I'm going to move. So let's create.
So it doesn't look like it's going to lock the screen on a Chromebook, but in a distance learning situation, a student can pick up another device just as easy. So the locking into a test mode that we experience in the classroom is going to look different in the online world.
I did get a private message that Schoology uses a tool called Respond Us to lock down the browser.
Perfect. Okay. So when you're adding questions, these are my different types of question options I can do. I can do true, false, multiple choice, ordering, short answer, essay, fill in the blank, matching. I can pull from a question bank. So you could have a bank of questions already created. I could import. as well as add page breaks, etc. So it sounds like it's a mixture of forms and more. So if I add a true false question, type it in, add the question. Is it timed or not timed? You can choose how long they have to answer that question. And is it aligned to the certain learning objectives? Okay, canceling. There are additional settings. Do you want them to be able to upload anything? Is there a time limit to take this? How many attempts can they have, etc. Okay, I think that possibly answered it.
I think you were able to we can add time limits. There is a feature called Respond to Us that does lock down the browser. Again, that doesn't enable a second device or third device. And it looks like the other test bank question was answered. The only thing was, is there a certain number of test questions you could have?
I think it's unlimited, is my assumption. You can keep making this as big as you'd like.
I think so as well. Nope, it's unlimited is my response from a private message. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay, any other questions?
While we're waiting for other questions to come in, I'm going to go ahead and put our resource page in the chat link. That's where all the recorded Zooms will be.
And I will demo that as where you're doing that. So that's in the chat. It will take you to this professional learning page. So once I have them finished uploaded, you'll notice this is the LMS overview. This was from last week. It's there live. You can, or not live, but it is there. You can watch the recording from last week. All of these sessions are below. Instead of registering on Zoom, it will be the video links. So the recordings will be here. So when they are finished, the recordings to each of these will be available. You can watch them and rewatch them as many times as you'd like. You'll get used to seeing us. And we like that because we want to be your contact. We want to help you as much as we can.
So Annette asked if there's any way to track engagement, and it's just like all the others. There is a way for you to get analytics that allow you to know how long a kid has been logged in, but many students stay logged in for days and days at a time and don't log out. I do know that there is an ability for you to monitor how long they were in a specific assignment within that, but again, may not work for attendance purposes.
And Schoology does have an attendance tab. So you can take individual attendance in. I have personally not used it, but there is an attendance tab.
And I believe since there is an attendance tab, that will go over to your school information system as well if you have that integration added.
I believe so as well.
Yeah, we're just not going to be able to lock in and see how long a kid is actually doing anything, as they can be in another tab, they could be off doing something else. We saw in one case where we had adult learners logged into 3 or 4 online sessions at the same time. So if adult learners can do that, so will student learners.
I will tell you, even with Zoom videos, I've logged into 4 different Zoom sessions at the same time and hosted them. So you can do that as well.
Kids are going to be just as creative as they were in the classroom as they are online. Same classroom management issues, just different platform.
Okay, so let's take some last questions. If you don't want to type it in chat, feel free to unmute and we will try our best to answer them before we end our session. So if there is any last minute Schoology questions or overall learning management system next steps questions. Give 10 more seconds.
Wait time is so long on Zoom.
It feels like it, but it's really not.
No, it's not. It just feels like it.
And another thing I always point out with all of these videos, and I usually do it at least one time a day, we've all been in meetings, we've all been in district meetings. But now that we're in a virtual world, we all tend to wave, which is a different feature. So have you ever walked out of a meeting and waved to your colleagues? I doubt it. But online, we do. We all wave.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, since there are no questions, I'm going to say thank you all very much. Will further training be available for each of these systems through the AESD? Yes, there will. This was a 100 level overview. We are actually meeting, I believe it's next week, to discuss dates for our next opportunities to dive deeper and support you at a different level, which is the integration and how to use in the classroom.
And if you want to, you can reach out to any of your ESD staffs. Again, on that where we are posting the videos, if you scroll all the way down to the bottom, you should be able to see who your contacts are for your region, or slide 2.
And Dennis is always available also. I like to put Dennis out there as well. Very
We just
helpful.
need to add him in there. We need to put OSPI Dennis Small. I'm just nominating you, Dennis.
All right, I'm honored.
Okay, thank you everybody, and I will do the waving, or we always do applause too. So whatever you feel you could. Dennis is the best. I agree.
Yes. Thank you, everyone.
I'm stopping recording, so if you want to turn cameras back on, you can.